Because I'll clip it, so. Do you need us to sound off?
No,
So
I
they're-
don't think so.
I'm here.
Are you ready?
No, are you ready?
I am ready. I am ready. I'm going to be looking at you most of the time, Boobs. So, because this is really for you. And for Dan. But I don't know, Dan found his way out of here. Okay. Ready?
Ready.
All right.
Ready.
So today I am going to give you guys a short class on ePCR and how to fill it out. There's a few things I want to touch on before we get started. I do have the ePCR program here on the computer, so we're going to be able to follow along as best we can. But before we get started, I wanted to ask, how comfortable are you with using it?
Does anybody else know our bike?
50%.
50%. I don't
You know
know.
our bike, how much
85%.
85%.
There's nothing in here.
86%.
86%. That I don't believe. Okay. Anyways, it's pretty clear. Like, even the people who use it, a lot of the time, there's a lot of features that I don't necessarily use or are comfortable with. Those are kind of the good to knows rather than the need to know areas of the PCR. And we'll kind of touch on those very briefly, but for the most part, we're going to go over how to fill it out and kind of in a linear fashion. So first off, you need to log into the program. It's Tablet PCR is the program we use. It should be on the desktop of every hospital computer, and then like a Station 12 here, it's only on this computer over here in the firefighter office, and then over in the medic office. This is the logo right here. It's a RescueNet Tablet PCR. When you open it up, there's a login screen. All you have to do is start typing your name, and then hit return. It'll populate the password here, and then everybody's password is their FD login for the Muni. So in my case, it's FD SYM. What this brings up is the dashboard. The dashboard is it has two parts to it. The bottom part is the CAD calls. This is your CAD information. So when you complete your call, you go to the hospital, go in service, or when you go in service from a refusal, CAD forces the information into this pending PCR box. What this is your times and your CAD information. What you use this for is when you merge it with a blank PCR, and I'll show you how that works. So there are other things here, options, which you don't have to worry about. The help brings up a online manual, and then we'll talk about these buttons in a second. First, you have to set your crew. This is pretty important because if you don't set your crew, you won't have the right PCRs underneath here. That's a common problem. So if you log in, you have to set yourself as part of the crew. The program otherwise won't let you complete that. So in this case, I find myself. A lot of times it wants a signature, and then you set your provider level. I'm going to be the primary on this, and then today I'm working with Evan. I'll sign for him. Put his provider level in, and then he'll be the secondary. Hit OK, highlight it, set as current. Now you'll see these calls switched over, and now these are actually our calls that I can use to start a PCR. So there's two ways to do it. I can either take one of these calls that I know I was on and then pull it up into this inbox. This is the internet. This is local to the computer. It's important to realize that. Or I can start a blank PCR, work it all the way through. Afterwards, it'll still be up there local to my computer. I can bring in this call, and then I can merge them together so the information will mesh up. So when I use this laptop, commonly that's how I do it, because we're not always in a connected environment. So I'll start a blank PCR, and then when I get to the hospital to a wireless, I will bring in the CAD, and then I'll mesh them together. If you're back here at the station and you're done with the call already, it doesn't make any sense to do that. You might as well just pull the CAD information up and then open a call within that. So we're going to do that first. So we'll take 4801 Old Seward, for example. You highlight it and you request the PCR, so you're taking it from the internet and bringing it local to your computer. What that does is it automatically populates the RMS number, all the times and whatnot. You highlight it, and then you open it. So we're going to kind of go through this in a linear fashion. And this is mostly the need to know, not the good to know, because there's a lot in here you can fill out, but most of what you need to fill out is just the pertinent stuff for either NEMSIS requirements or what we need for our billing. So these are tabs at the top, and these are separate fields underneath each tab. The way I like to work this, like I said, is in a linear fashion. So in info, we automatically have our dispatch, our RMS number. What we do need to fill out is the response mode. So we'll choose code red, code yellow. We'll go to a scene, and then we'll choose our location type. Many times it's just a home or a residence or a business or anything like that. And then we also have to choose the fire RMS incident type, which is most of the time 321. Beyond that, we don't deal with this mileage tab, and there's pretty much nothing else that we fill out. On this first incident info tab, it's really dispatch, scene, and there's only 3 fields total we need to do. It gets a little bit more self-explanatory as you go on. The patient information, I'm not going to go through every single one, but try to fill this out as completely as possible. This has a lot to do with whether we get paid or not, and billing. So patient name, gender, race, ethnicity, date of birth, weights are important if they're pertinent to your medications, social security number. This does have a driver's license tab. This was designed to be able to scan it or put it in. It's not pertinent for our purposes. But we do need the address. There's a couple ways to do that. You can ask them for their address. Or if you are opening up a PCR that already has the CAD info in it, and you went to their home address to pick them up, you can just go to copy address, and you can highlight pickup address and use that. Makes it a lot easier. And then there's some other information that you need to fill out down here. So advanced directives, and if you have any belongings or anything like that. I don't typically fill this out. If it's pertinent to me, I put it in the narrative. Next of kin is only pertinent for 1129s or for pediatrics, yeah, for minors. And then billing, we don't touch at all. So this is a subjective area, right? We all write SOAP narratives, and it's set up that way. So first we want to pick our chief complaint. You usually only pick one. I'm going to explain how these boxes work, and it really should transfer over to everything, including medications and allergies and everything else. So as you go through these, you'll notice that some of these have plus marks next to them. Commonly, you'll get in here and you won't find what you're looking for, and this happened to me when we first started using this program. So what I ended up having to do was learn where things were hidden. So syncope, for example, had a hard time. I always have a hard time finding that for some reason, and it's actually under altered level of consciousness. To get back to that, you have to go back up to here, back to your chief complaints, and that brings you back here. But so if I was to choose syncope, I would just highlight it. Hitting it again is not presented as. I don't know anybody that uses that. Don't bother. But so make sure it's a check mark, and then if you're done, you can just move on to the next tab. You also have the opportunity to put a secondary complaint in there. It's automatically going to populate. So abdominal pain, for example. Cause of injury, only use this if there's an actual cause of injury. This is a state of Alaska and NEMSIS reporting requirement, and a NFIRS reporting requirement, I think, as well. Past medical history, again, we just go down through here and pick what we want. There are sub-menus, like we talked about before, for things such as pain or cardiac or whatnot. If there's absolutely nothing on here that falls within that area. Hi,
Are you teaching?
I am. Just pick other. Hit search. And you can type in, you can free type it if you want. Make sure you hit other afterwards. It'll bring up a text box like that. You can type as much as you want, hit OK, and it comes in. It just hits other, note, cabbage. You can do that under actually any of these. So if you have a cardiac, past medical history that isn't specified in there, you just highlight cardiac, hit the other button, and then you can free type what you actually want to put in there. It makes it a lot easier to put more specific type past medical histories in there. And you can choose as many of these as you want. So that's the nice part. Medications is the same way. This isn't a complete database of medications. I found the fastest way to do this is to start in your search tab and then just start typing. If the medication is present, it'll highlight automatically, just hit return, it populates over into the other tab. As long as those medications are in the database, you can just type, hit return once it highlights it. Problem is there are a lot that aren't in there, or there'll be a generic version of it in there and not the brand name of it. So sometimes it pays to know both.
Does it have any generics in there?
Yeah, it has. Some of them have both. Some of the medications are only brand name, and some of them are only. So, for example, Zofran is in there, but on this, yeah, it's not in there. I have a hard time pronouncing the generic of it anyway. So, in that case, you would just hit other, and I know a lot of guys that aren't even using the highlights over here. They'll just open this other tab and type in the entire medication list. I think it's different strokes for different folks.
Are you concerned with adding dosages?
I'm not.
No.
No.
This is the medications the patient's on.
Yes, this is patient medications. Yeah, especially since we're bringing medications now with every single patient, we know what their dosages are because we're bringing the bottles. I mean, ideally. Allergies works the exact same way as the medications box does. Same thing if you don't want to try to find them in here, you can go ahead and hit the other tab and just free type the entire list if you want. And then of course, no up there. And then the other tab, this is one that a lot of people forget about, but it will ding you when you try to complete your PCR at the end. So it wants to know who you obtained your medical history from, pregnancy, whether that's pertinent for male or female, and then of course, primary symptom. This is an NFIRS thing, I think, or an NEMSIS thing. A lot of this stuff seems like it repeats over and over, but there's a reason behind it because there's reporting requirements. So, and this is very, very, very generic. I find myself doing other a lot in this tab. So. Don't be scared.
But the pregnancy, was it a non-applicable or a no for men pregnancy? Something strange for that one.
It depends, and this is where the program gets a little tricky sometimes. So, for example, if it's a male, I don't even think you have to fill it out. But I do put not applicable just so I don't get gigged by the program at the end. But you can't put not known for some reason, but you can put not recorded. I think that's just a kind of a weird nuance of the program. So apparently even if the female doesn't know she's pregnant, you can't put that in there. Again, we default to the narrative when we do that.
You can't put not known?
You can't put not known.
Okay. I got a question on history obtained from.
Sure.
Can you free type something?
No.
Or do you have to choose one of those?
No, you have to choose one of these.
Okay.
Unless you have this other tab down here with the text field, you can't free type it. Again, revert to your narrative. I mean, as we all know, I mean, it's kind of, I'm getting ahead of myself, but as we all know, realistically, if we ever have to go to court for this, it's the narrative that's going to save us. It's the narrative that has the meat and potatoes of this. Most of this other stuff it's all reporting requirements or billing for that matter. It was just like Matt was saying earlier. They're not going to be like, well, you didn't click this box, so now you owe this guy $1 million. It's all going to come down to you didn't write this, or if you didn't do it, it didn't happen. So if you didn't write it, it didn't happen. Objective tab. This is the physical assessment tab. I don't use this personally. We do a SOAP narrative, so my objective section of my narrative, which is my physical exam, is actually written out. This is a fill in the box version of that. I find it very clunky and tough to fill out and very generic. I have a better time describing my patient if I actually write it in rather than trying to work within the confines of this thing. In fact, I don't know a lot of people who do use them. Be warned though, we may actually have to use this as part of a NEMSIS requirement in the future, but right now we're getting away with not doing it.
It's not required.
I don't know how about this? They're not holding us to this right now. It may be required in the future where it may come down where everybody has to fill out this because these are searchable fields. So they pull information out of it in order to send it off to NEMSIS, and they can't do that when we free text our narratives in the objective section. So I'm not going to go through it too much, but the process is the same as putting in vital signs. So if you understand how to enter the vital signs in here, you'll understand how to go back and enter this. Just know that there are two different ways of doing this. There's a text version of this where you open these up and you just go ahead and click and fill in the box or whatever, or use within normal limits or not assessed. The other way to do this is using the body survey. I think this is an even worse way of doing it. It's slow and it's not very smooth. So you can go through the entire system and just kind of pick what you want. And you can free type it if you want as well. But realistically, if you write a good objective in your narrative, you shouldn't have to use this. But like I said, who knows? This is how you go back to the list right here. And you can just go through the whole section, system by system. So I'm going to go done with that. What it does is it opens up, it shows that you took an assessment and it'll timestamp it. Times are something that I'm going to hit pretty hard because that's what trips everybody up with this program is timed. But I'm going to take that separately. So that's kind of a good to know, not a need to know. What you do need to do is a provider impression. This is just what you think is wrong with the patient. You can choose something, and then if you want, an additional one will be your secondary impression, any additional ones. And you can put as many of these as you want. But the first one you choose is going to be your primary.
You might have covered this, but where do you put patient weight?
Oh, that was, yeah, you walked in after.
Inpatient.
That is covered under the patient section here. And the weight is right here. And
Okay.
it'll automatically calculate kilos for you too,
Cool.
which is nice.
All right.
So, provider impression trauma. I don't fill this out unless there is trauma, and even then, sometimes I don't fill it out. I think this is kind of a good to know thing. You can pick through here, and if you're really just dying to mess with the man, you can always put in a bazooka injury. And you can actually put not presented as bazooka and be technically correct.
Yes.
Matt.
Previous, it said provider impression. Does that default to whoever you set your manning up as in primary provider?
No,
Or-
it doesn't matter. I
Whoever's writing
am
the
the primary
reports.
provider. This is my paperwork. You know what I mean?
Let's talk about the bazooka and the not primary. What does that X mean?
Oh, I explained this earlier.
Sorry,
So when you click it the first time, you're choosing it as, this was a bazooka injury. Most of this stuff, and that includes the history and maybe the allergies and meds, where if you click it a second time, it's a pertinent negative, basically.
Ah,
So did not present as.
right.
So you could do the same for chest pain, did not present as chest pain, right? Again, most of us put pertinent negatives at the end of our subjective sections anyways, so, but yeah, I always like that. I don't use the trauma section that much, honestly. Again, I type most of it in. And I think this is kind of like a physician quick read, but realistically, most of those guys read our narratives. They don't know how to translate our whole PCR. This is another one that's missed a lot, and this will get you when you try to complete it later on. But possible injury, if you put yes, you have to go back and fill out cause of injury. It will make you do that later. So if it's an injury, make sure you do fill this out. Otherwise, you do not even need to touch this if you don't say it's an injury. And then drug alcohol use, you have to fill that out. And I know there's not, it's kind of, you're constrained by the choices that they give you, but you just do the best you can. So, cardiac arrest tab, obviously, we're only going to use this during cardiac arrest. Just some quick and easy fill-ins a few times, ROSC, whatnot. It's self-explanatory. If it's an arrest, just go through this. Make sure you fill out as much as you can. The vital signs, this is your flow chart, basically. The vital signs and your interventions. And this is probably where I spend the most amount of my time outside of my narrative. And to put a set of vital signs in, and it's a little bit more than just a basic set, you can go down here and it says tap add to capture. The first thing everybody does is try to tap to add, but you gotta hit add down here. So again, I'll address the times at the end because that's really its own discussion. But just know that the very first one you put in is going to drop you right on top of your on-scene time. I picked one that I think we got canceled off of, so there's no on-scene time. But your first time is going to default to your on-scene time. Times cannot stack on top of each other as far as, if you got on scene at 18:51:58, you cannot start your assessment or do a set of vital signs at 18:51:58. It has to be 18:51:59 or after. And everything that happens has to be between your on-scene time, or realistically your at-patient time, and your clear time. And if it doesn't, you will not be able to complete this. And you can start tapping around these times and really mess with your world if you don't know how to do it. And I mean, I've seen everybody here do it. So, yeah. Again, I'll address the times better here in a second. So, just going down through here, prior to arrival, who performed it, so pick the provider who performed it. Patient position, how you found them. Blood pressure method, blood pressure pulse, regularity, strength, respiration rate. A lot of this is self-explanatory, so I'm not going to dig too deep into it unless there's something here that catches you guys that you don't understand. GCS, the qualifier for it. Can you hit pause on that? All right.
All right.
Interrupted because of a call. Okay, where were we? Talking about the vital signs section. All right, thank you, Matt.
Excellent class. I think you should get an A, sir.
Oh, thank you, so we were going down through the vital signs section. Like I said, I wasn't going to spend too much time on each of these. They're all fairly self-explanatory. But when you'll notice that this is more than just your basic vital signs. There's pupillary dilation, arm movement, spontaneous. Your pain scale is in here. You can expand on the pain scale if you want. If you can go in here and there's a FACES pain scale too. I don't find a lot of use for it. Skin color, temperature, condition, body temperature, etc., etc. When you finish this, you can go ahead and just click on vital signs again, and what it'll do is it'll show your vital signs in a flowchart format. So my first set of vitals was taken at 18:51:58. I can go ahead and add additional sets of vitals as I want. The same holds true for intervention. And I'll hit that here in a second. First, I just want to touch on, there is an APGAR score if you deliver. I actually haven't had the opportunity to use this yet, but it does calculate it out for you, which is pretty slick. By the way, if you don't want that set of vitals anymore, you just hit the X button. It'll ask you if you want to delete it, and you just say yes. You're killing me.
When can you manipulate the time?
No, I'll get to that, because like I said,
Because I went in there 3 sets of vital signs, but I
time
remember...
is truly its own discussion, because I've seen many guys start clicking on times, and before they know it, they're like completely hosed, and we're having to get back into live reports to basically transfer all the times back over. The LifePack download is when you transfer your LifePack information over. So whenever we do RSIs, no, go ahead, I don't care, man. RSIs and cardiac arrests, anything that requires a cardiac monitor download. You connect it to this with a USB port. You just hit upload, and then you transfer it from the LifePack. Again, that's kind of a different discussion. So interventions works the same way as vital signs as far as the flow chart. If you want to add an intervention, you just go ahead and hit the add button down here. That gives you your most common ones on the side here, but then if you want to get a little deeper into it, these are all your BLS ones, all your ALS ones, airway, medications, cardiac arrest stuff, and then everything. I'll give you an example. So let's do Lasix, for example. Well, we don't have Lasix. Lidocaine. The good thing is it does know what type of medication it is to a certain extent, so it'll pre-fill milligrams in there for me. If it's fentanyl, it'll pre-fill micrograms, for example. But you do need to come through here, make sure your times are right. Again, if you want to, you can't set this on top of your en route or on scene. You actually have to come in here and change the times. Again, I'll address that here in a second. So prior to arrival, no. Who performed? It was me. The dosage, go ahead and put that in. So, what's that?
150.
150. Route. The indication for whatever you did it for. We'll call it. Let's call it converting. Where is it? Spend too much time on it.
PVCs.
Or VTAC, that's what I meant to say, VTAC. And then response improved, unchanged, etc. So you can add as many as these. If you don't like what you put in, you can go ahead and hit that X and it'll erase it. I do use this guy a bit. So this will duplicate your entire entry. So it's real handy during cardiac arrests. So if I have epinephrine, say we give 6 epis during the whole thing, I can go ahead and just hit this. It'll copy all the information, and all I have to do is just go change the times. Because, I mean, let's be honest, all we're doing is 1 milligram epi, response unchanged for the most part, unless we get ROS. So this does prove handy on occasion. I'm sorry, this one. And it's a duplicate one. This one just adds a new one without having to go back up to interventions and hit that add button again. So, okay, so times and dispositions. This does need to fill out disposition and transport. So if we treated them, we go ahead and hit treated and transported, and then fill out what you can. Firearm S actions, for me, if we transport them, we get a 34. If we didn't, they get a 30. If we didn't transport, you don't need to fill out anything else underneath there. Otherwise, you need to fill in how they were moved to the ambulance, how they were moved from the ambulance, what hospital they went to, whether there's diversion, etc., etc. So fill this out as completely as possible. All right, times. Again, this is kind of where the discussion gets a little tricky. So, like I mentioned earlier, all your times, interventions, and vital signs have to go within at patient or on scene. I guess we have to put an at patient time and cleared time. So your in-service time, or destination time, pardon me, and your at patient time. What happens is, when I add a set of vital signs, let's go ahead and do this really quick. Let's put a, let's see, so let's say we were on scene at 1852, and then we were in service at 1854. What happens is, if these times, when you highlight the time section on the vital signs, it'll show you your times flow chart over here. But what happens is whenever you add one, it defaults automatically to your on-scene time or at patient time, right on top of it. When you go to try to complete it, it will not let you do that. So you have to remember every time on your first set of vitals to drop that at least 1 minute in front of your on-scene or at patient time. You understand that? Okay. So, for example, this is actually in the wrong section. So, dispatched en route. So we need to take this. What you do is you highlight the time section, right? And then you click where you want it to go. And that's how you change it. What ends up screwing a lot of people up when they do this is they start clicking back and forth with this, but then what they don't realize they're doing is they're changing the times every time they highlight one and then click over here. You can't just look. You have to highlight where you want to put that time. So on scene, I was on scene at 18:51. And that's how you change it. You highlight it. But what people end up doing, like I said, is clicking back and forth, and they end up changing all their times up and down, back and forth, and screwing it up. And really, that's what's going to nail you in the end. And then they end up having to get back into live reports and changing the whole
What
deal.
was the,
So does that make sense?
the crossings
Every-
on that?
Questions?
76 and C.
Sides, office, please. Dan Sides, office.
Yep, that makes sense because I've been guilty of
Everybody.
trying to
I've done the
figure it
same
out
thing.
and then
Yeah.
I didn't highlight. And sometimes the red's confusing too.
Yeah.
You think that you're moving the red stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I've found, like, we were conditioned with RMS with red. Got to fill out
Right.
the red, got to fill out the red. And you have to fill out a lot more red than the red in this program. I mean, the red needs to be completed, but there's a lot more to it than that. So I've just kind of ignored it after a while.
yeah.
Like the other tabs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't right.
So that's about it. There's a signature tab. We don't add signatures on our report, so don't even bother. Then the review. This shows you the crew that you set up on the call. If you need to change it for some reason, you can do that from here. This is your overall time summary. So this isn't just your call times. This is everything you added. So that includes like my assessments, my vital signs, the lidocaine I added earlier. So if you're on a really complicated call, or cardiac arrest is the common one, you can actually look at this and it'll kind of give you the grand scheme of things. And this is another way of fixing that. So if I take my assessment and I figure I need to actually push it forward 2 minutes or something like that, I actually have the ability to do that. So I can take this plus button, and so I'm at 18:51 and I want to make it 18:53. I just hit the plus button a couple of times and I'm done. It's actually a fairly easy way to do it. Or
So
I can also free type the time.
We start jacking with the times. Is that going to mess with the event adds to the Life Pack 12s?
No,
Whoa.
because all that is a pull from the 12. So you're pulling that information from the life
Well,
pack.
I mean, I might manually put in like a lidocaine.
Right, and you
then
can change the
and then
time.
you pull in, you realize, is it going to look like I have 2 lidocaines? Or
Oh, right. If you add, all it's doing
Because
is
we're
it's going to take information that you put into the report and take your life pack download and it's going to put it together. So if you manually add a lidocaine and you put a lidocaine in your events, in your monitor, you're going to have 2 lidocaines. So pick one or the other.
Okay.
What I do is the first thing I do
Well, what
is
I'm saying is, if I pick the wrong one and I pick the one that was imported, and then Levy tries to pull out the code stats,
doesn't matter.
and is it going to actually change where that mark is on the 12 lead
No.
real-time printout
No.
of when the
No,
event
because you're not changing.
Does that make sense?
PCO file is actually an attachment. That's the.
Manipulating times in this is kind of more of an order of operations. Manipulating time in that changes what the effects of the drugs.
You can't
interpretation
manipulate
is.
those times.
Okay.
Because when he pulls, it's called a PCO file, the monitor download. When he pulls that, none of this information I'm putting in here has anything to do with it. That's a completely separate file. So all your events that you put in there, it doesn't matter whether you mess with them here, they're still going to be present in that file.
Hey, Dan?
Yep.
Anybody
Okay.
else on this computer?
Anyways, this is a good way to mess with your times if you need to look at everything in one shot. So it's pretty slick. If you do download and you want to view the EKG, it would be here. And then, of course, the narrative. This is a completely different class, so I'm not going to go into it. Hopefully everybody here knows how to write a narrative, but like I said, I could do another 25-minute class on that. So when you're all done with it, you need to complete the PCR. You do have the ability to attach stuff. I've never done that, so a picture or something like that if you wanted to.
Before you complete, sorry, I know you started talking about it earlier, but how does the computer know who the primary is and who's writing the report? Because the writing the report is not necessarily the primary.
It is in this case, absolutely.
So if I
You
set
set-
up my manning in the morning, for
Mhm.
example, I'm on medic and I'm the primary
Mm-hmm.
PM,
Yes.
and Dan wants to write the report.
He can add. I'll show you here in a sec. How's that?
Okay.
When I'm done. So you go. You're all done. You complete the PCR. It's not going to let me complete this, by the way, because I didn't go through and complete everything I needed to. But if you have missed stuff, this is where it's going to show up. And so, say there was only a couple of small things, I can actually come in here and let's see. Let's find a good one. I can actually highlight it, and it'll take me to that section, which is pretty nice. But if you've completed everything, it'll show your name. You just highlight your name, you'll put in your password, and it'll show it as completed. And then it'll take you back to the inbox. So this is what I was telling you as far as, or this is what you were talking about. If Dan came in and wanted to write a report, all he could do is he could open up his current crew tab and he could add a second crew on there that had him as the primary and me as the secondary. And then he would set that as the current crew and then open up a call. Follow?
So whoever's writing the actual SOAP
Is the primary.
has to put themselves in the manning as primary.
Yes. Yes. And you can do it within the call too. So say I got 90% through this call. I showed you there's that one tab where you can mess with your manning.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do it from that too. So. That's about it. Oh, I was going to show you how to merge two calls in. So say I was working offline. Oh boy, I do not want that on there. I'll mess with that later. So say I opened up a blank call and was working offline without any kind of CAD information. I'd go ahead and open a new one. As you see, there's nothing in here. Even when you look at times, there's absolutely zero in there. So I have to get all my CAD times, all my CAD numbers. What I would do is, there's my blank call. I would bring up one of these calls from the bottom. I would request that. It would come up. I would take them and I would highlight both of them and then I would merge them together into one call. Follow? Mm-hmm. But usually that's kind of unique to this laptop. I'm one of the only people with this right now until we all start getting laptops, because we're all going to be offline until you finish your call, because this stuff does not populate until you complete the call, period. So we have to wait till we get to the hospital or whether we clear the call for like a refusal or something like that. And those will merge together. There'll be a warning that says, do you want to merge these calls? And then it'll merge into one call. So, pretty slick. That's it. Questions?
All right, good
Comments,
class. Thank you.
concerns? Yeah, I'm sure I went over. All right, thanks.